Welcome back to Screenfish Radio. I'm so glad you can join us this day. This day. Wow, that sounded so formal. I'm glad you could join us this day as as we are talking.
What have we gotten ourselves into? The formality, my God.
I welcome thee to the radio of Screenfish. I'm so excited this week to be talking about The Banshees of Inisherin, directed by Martin McDonagh. And this, not only is the film going to be fun to talk about, I'm looking forward to this conversation as I have two of my favorite people here with me today, Deb Whalen and Dave Voigt from In the Seats. Welcome to you both.
Hey.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you both here, and I am really looking forward to this. The Banchovies is this tale of tiny Irish fish. What is going on this morning? All right, anyway.
They walk the earth and,
I need someone to create a cartoon called The Banchovies.
The Banchovies.
Like, it needs to be a hot animated feature. It's
Today on The Banshees.
Well, we're going to talk about The Banshees of Inisherin, which, directed by Martin McDonagh, tells a story of a remote island off the coast of Ireland where Padraic is devastated when his buddy Colm suddenly puts an end to their lifelong friendship. With help from his sister and a troubled young islander, Padraic sets out to repair the damaged relationship by any means necessary. However, as Colm's resolve only strengthens, he soon delivers an ultimatum that leads to shocking consequences. The film stars Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and Kerry Condon, and as always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers, and the film is in theaters now. But I would love to hear from you both, what you thought of The Banshees of Inisherin.
Ladies first, please.
I was going to nominate you, but you went first and nominated me. Oh, so thank you, Dave. I just squeaked a viewing of the film in last night. Went to the. It was one of the first times I don't go to the cinema very much anymore. I watch everything at home now, so it was kind of cool just to be in the theater again. So everything about the viewing was grand, including that I really, really, really loved this movie. There's something really sort of like it sort of reels you in with this sense of like comfort and coziness, and there's, they have a rhythm to their days on this little island, and every afternoon at 2, Padraic goes down to the pub and he picks up his friend Colm along the way, and but very quickly that sense of comfort is startled and unsettled, and you wonder what the heck is going on. So even though you're unsettled, your interest is piqued, and there's a lot to like about this movie. A lot.
I have to ask, Deb, when you saw it in the theater, were there other people there? Like, was it, I don't know, there were people in the theater, okay.
I showed up about 15 minutes early, which is kind of unusual for me. I'm not an early arriver on the regular, but there were, I don't know, maybe up to 10 people in the theater when I got there, and then, as the preview started playing, more people came in, and it wasn't packed, but yeah, I mean, on a random Thursday night. How long when did the film come out? How many weeks has it been in?
Oh, only last week, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not a major like blockbuster release, so I just wasn't sure. Like, it's a very interesting, like, niche sort of film.
Yeah.
So whether it's a Thursday or opening day, I just wasn't sure how many people would be there.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, I would say the theater was maybe about half full on a random Thursday a week after opening night. Not too shabby. At the Varsity Theater on Bloor Street, again, not the most popular of cinemas, but it has its faithful attendees. And I feel like people who go to the Varsity Theater this is the kind of film that they're going for anyway, so
right.
That may have skewed the numbers in the film's favor on a random Thursday night a week after opening.
It may not be the same crowd as, say, Black Adam.
I think that's a safe bet.
Agreed. Agreed. I will make a confession though. Money's a bit tight right now, and so I snuck past concessions with a can of stout in my purse. And because we know God is listening, I felt the need to confess. So, but
God's one of our subscribers, actually. He's
your primary subscriber.
He's somebody's listening. I don't know who it is.
I just thought
I think it's appropriate that you snuck in a pint.
That's the thing, right?
It's
like,
it's
I
appropriate.
have to be drinking some stout while I'm watching this film. I knew this well in advance. So, like, there's going to be plenty of pub scenes. They're all going to be drinking the dark stuff. Like, I can't go without, but I also need to be cutting corners as much as possible. So, and I had some at home. It was chilled. It was ready to go. We snuck her in. I waited for a loud part to make that bang noise. I may have done this before.
Did you do the overt cough, or did you wait for a loud
I
bang?
hadn't even thought of that. Apparently, I haven't done it enough times before. Thanks for the tip.
For next time. Dave, what did you think?
Well, I mean, I absolutely loved it. I mean, this really is a film that, I mean, it's dark, it's hilarious, it's emotional, it kind of speaks to the times almost, really. But I mean, it's one of those things where when you're watching something and you're that blown away by how much you've got to unpack with it, it's, again, I mean, I've been looking forward to this too, just because it's one of those movies that just will spark conversation.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's really well done. You know, not knowing, I've never seen In Bruges. Forgive me.
You should, but yeah,
that's what I've heard. So my knowledge of McDonagh's work is fairly limited, and of course I saw 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, and I know he has
literally?
a taste.
You were in Missouri when you saw it, or
I did, just outside. I didn't see the movie. I just saw 3 Billboards.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I assumed I got the gist.
You heard that joke here first. Well done.
Thank you. But no, I mean, I knew that he had a taste for the darkness, and that's what shocked me so much about the first half of this movie, because it's such a, you know, until fingers come into play, it's kind of a very lighthearted comedy in a lot of ways, and it just goes.
That's not foreboding at all until fingers come into play. Spoiler alert!
Hey, we're spoilers in this. It's okay. But you know, when the first one goes, you're like, that's when it started to take a turn. Took a turn, and man, but it's so well done. It's so well written, and so well performed. And this may seem weird to say, because it's so rarely that I get to say this about a film. I don't think I've seen anything quite like it in a long time.
I think that's very fair to say.
I just haven't. It's such a unique film. And funny as all get out. Oh my gosh. Like that even just the opening conversation where they're sitting outside the pub. And he's saying, "You liked me yesterday." He says, "Well, did I?" It's like,
I loved when he's sitting there with, you know, his little buddy Dominic in the corner, watching Colm in the other corner, and being like, he just says he doesn't like me anymore. And Dominic goes, "What is he, 12?" Which is exactly what we're all thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're like, how childish is this man to just decide to not like his lifelong friend anymore? Like, but it leads you begging the question, what is actually going on? And you don't get a proper answer for a really long time. And in fact, I think you can get to the end of the film without a satisfying answer to that question. Like, you really have to sit there and chew on it and mull it over And like I don't know. Did I? How would you answer that question? Like, what is actually going on?
I made up my own story.
Go
I
on.
no.
I'd love to hear it.
um, yeah. He. I had no story. I had nothing to
How
share.
dare you?
Everywhere I was going to go, I don't. I don't want to go. No, because I think all we know is he just says he thinks he's an idiot. Isn't that what he said? Essentially,
Sure.
that's the reason that he gives. Is there anything more?
Well, that's the reason he gives, but is it the real answer?
Well, I mean, there's that bit about his sense of his own mortality and wanting to leave a lasting mark
Right.
and yada yada yada,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean we all know is, BS, but it definitely had that sense of the Brendan Gleeson character sort of struggling with his mortality, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes any
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's exactly where I went as well. And I mean, you can even take it a step further and like get the whole mess of projection, in there, where he's looking at Colm is looking at Padraic and seeing what he fears about himself in Padraic, right? This man is
Mm.
dull. He's boring. He's senseless. He's dull, right? And that is what he is afraid of, right? He doesn't want to get to the end of his life being an unmemorable person. He wants to be Mozart. He wants to be, Beethoven or whoever else, gets referred to or he's thinking of, right? Someone like Colin may be thinking of a number of different great artists whose names are, in houses and mouths all over the place. But yeah, he's looking at his buddy and projecting onto him all of his fears and saying, "You're the problem. Get away from me."
But that's a funny thing to me is that, like, it's got to be projecting because he's doing nothing to prevent him from accomplishing these things. Like, Padraic is not sitting there saying, "Why are you writing any music? Like, what's wrong with you? Don't create that lasting song."
Yeah.
He's not interfering unless he just feels like relationships are interfering. Is that what all it amounts to?
I mean, if he's at that level of frustration, possibly, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, because it's so unbelievably cold. And that's why I love the line, like you said, what is he, 12? Because the response is here. and it's one thing to say you disagree with somebody's motivation, but like the response is here. Like it's off the charts.
Yeah.
To the point of dismemberment of
Mm-hmm.
himself. He doesn't even try to take his fingers. He doesn't threaten himself. He says, "I'm going to do it to myself if you
Which
don't leave me
is
alone."
so beautifully twisted, and if I'm not mistaken, very Irish. I mean, they are so they're such a they're so well known for, like their passion and their emotion and whatnot, but like they're so smart that sometimes they're willing to go to lengths that, like you see these characters in these stories that are just willing to go to extra lengths just to make the emphasis known. And that felt like a very Irish thing for me. Like, I'm not going to take your fingers. The threat is that I'm going to take mine, and it will be your responsibility that I am in more pain.
It's so much worse. It's like
True.
It's true.
you're because it's not even like I'm going to punish you. I'm going to pour hot coals on your head for being nice. For being
I'm
like,
going to punish myself because of you.
yes. Um, it's
and
it,
and also, this is a very small place, right?
mm,
Like, it's this small collection of houses on a tiny island off the coast of another small island, right? Like,
yeah.
they're so isolated. So to say to someone, "Stay away from me," whether you were good friends or not, is a statement. And then to say it to a good friend very suddenly, unprovoked, like it there what I love one of the many things that I loved about this film was the subtlety of so many of the motivations. Like, the core of things is so down deep. And so, like, I was just left with this sense of, like, Brendan Gleeson's portrayal of someone who was experiencing deep despair and in deep turmoil. He on the surface, he did not come across as someone who was in any kind of turmoil whatsoever. But the more he spoke and as he reacted to things or didn't react to things, you could sense that it was way deeper down than the surface, and that it in turn affected me very deeply. Right, all of Padraic's stuff is on the surface, and he's like, "What is happening?" And then he gets drunk, and all of his thoughts are out on the table, and he just says what he thinks to people. Whereas, Colm is feeling something way deep down, and it's taking quite a bit of time to get to the surface. And as it gets there, it's just tiny little bubbles, and the real explosion isn't going to happen for some time. It's just so well done in creating character and the foils, of the two men next to each other. It's very unsettling, and I don't know why, but I loved it. I loved being unsettled that way.
It's I love the way you put that, because there's a great deal of subtlety going on between the two of them, and the rest of the town. I don't think the rest. I think the rest of the town's just sort of watching it happen. But they've got their own drama, because you've got. See, there are other unsettling things about this town. Like, what's the Barry Coogan's character? I forget his name. Is that Dominic?
Mm-hmm.
His story is very dark and very, very sad.
Oh yeah,
his relationship with his father. And there you've got actual, like, reasons for anger and hatred, and you've got the opposite response. Like, Dominic, he walks away, but he still doesn't take things to any of the next level. Dominic doesn't, and by that I mean he doesn't, like, kill his father, or he doesn't, like, burn down the house or anything. He just sort of takes it in stride. And the rest of the town just knows it's happening, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, well, okay, well, he's your dad." Mm-hmm. It's like, no. Mm-hmm.
He's also a policeman.
Yes.
Right? The dad is also a policeman, so he's a man of authority and acts like it. If we have time a bit later, I would love to talk about the "all cops are bastards" theme in this film, because I really enjoyed it. But talking about the effect of power and whether or not that power is accepted by other people is what gives you the power, and he had it. Dominic's father had it as the cop on the island.
Yeah, that's a great point. Oh, go ahead.
Really, the film really is a statement of just the cruelty that we can inflict on one another just because we can. Mm-hmm. Not for any specific reason, just because, well, it's there. Why not?
Well, that was one of the things I thought was so interesting. And then you've got this, you can make of it as a grand allegory as you will, but you've got this mysterious civil war taking place across the sea. And the guns are firing, and they increasingly fire throughout the film. And then after the grand finale, they stopped. Mm-hmm. But it's not over.
It's never over. I mean, I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those things where we will just keep inflicting pain upon one another for whatever reason we want to make up today, and then just go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean that's a great point, Dave. I mean, and this is one of the things. I mean, I want to come back to talk about the policeman in power there a little bit too, but if this is just what we do, could anything have been done? Like, what could have been done to prevent it from? Because it escalates to an unreal level by the end. Although I have to say, I'm not going to lie, I thought it was hilarious when they come into the pub and he's like, "Just leave him be. His donkey just died." And it's like, oh, now cut him a break. Oh, Thank you, Colm. Um, it's now we'll cut him a break
Not
because his
something you
donkey
can say
died.
about many of your friends growing up in Toronto.
That's true. It's true. But like, I mean, it escalates to this unreal level. I just wondered what you thought about that idea.
See, to me, it wasn't an unreal level.
Hmm.
It was, it was, it was just the insensitivity and lack of empathy that pushed Colin Farrell over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, nope, we're no this you started this, I'm ending it.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't it like I mean, if you look at his context, right? Like he's already dealing with this like bizarre conflict with this friend, and then his on the day that his sister leaves for the mainland, quote
Yeah,
unquote, right? To mainland Ireland. So he's extra heartbroken, and he comes home to find more fingers in his yard and more streaks of blood on his front door, and finds his beloved donkey, who is a miniature donkey.
It's like little Sebastian from
Not unlike little
little
Sebastian.
Sebastian, Parks and
And
Rec.
he, like this is like so beloved. Like the sister had to keep kicking the donkey out of the house because animals are not to be let into the house, but it's only the donkey, like. So he's miniature. He's not taking
here's a
up
break,
much
it's the
space.
donkey.
And then, these tiny Irish, houses they're literally tiny. They're a box with maybe a hearth in the middle, and but so even a mini donkey is going to take up space. Anyway, the donkey is so beloved. It is allowed in the house, and it's the cutest thing. Whoever they cast in the role of the beloved miniature donkey was just brilliant.
It's George Clooney. How many
He's-
people know? He was.
You know what? I should have known looking in his eyes.
It's in there.
Yeah,
You can see. Yeah.
absolutely. But to after all of this is building up, and then to find his beloved donkey dead, like it's just too much to bear. I could not blame him. I could not blame him for that being the last straw. He's already started to show signs of whipping that meanness around on other people, the way that he the music student, I think, who he tells his father has been hit by a bread truck,
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes.
a bread van.
Oh, but that was deliberate. That was his decision to. He's trying to be bad at that point. Well, I'm going to do it too.
He's not very good at it yet.
It's true.
Right? And then, he has this terrible day, and, the last straw with his donkey choking on one of his friend's fat fingers.
Gosh.
And that is just it, right? The heart just hardens. And that is where he goes cold. And I mean, again, like I just listing all of these things to say, how could you blame him? How could you? I can't.
No,
maybe
neither can
one of
I.
you can.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I just think like I can understand him snapping, but he not only burned down his house in rage. He said, "I'm going to burn your house down tomorrow at noon, and if you're in it, that's fine, and if you're not,
I'm
that's
not
fine.
going to check.
I'm not going to check. You do what you want." I'm like that. That's a bit much to me for a guy, even to snap. But I mean, I know he's been pushed to the brink. But that's what I like. What amazes me about this film, and actually what I appreciated, is that by the time that they get to that, and they're having that conversation on the beach, the house is gone. He says, "Now we're even." No, we're not. Because I don't even know at that time if either of them remembers what started it. And yet now it's like that war across the ocean. It's just sort of whatever started it, it doesn't matter because now we're here and we're going to keep going. And that's what doesn't he say that? I'm going to call this the beginning. Let's call this the beginning.
Yeah.
But
that terrifies me.
it's the pointlessness of conflict. It's the pointlessness of again, just when one side has no empathy and the other side comes with empathy, eventually the side with empathy will run out of their empathy.
Right.
Or have to walk away, right? And I feel like that was the thing, was that if one of them had just chosen to walk away and let it go, and not to say that would have been an easy thing, But in order to preserve oneself, one's empathy, one's compassion, one's dignity, one's humanity, I think when you're engaged in conflict like this, it's not satisfactory, but sometimes the choice is to walk away. And if you
Mm.
keep engaging, there's only one way for it to go. Um, I I was talking to Gary, who is my husband, about this film, and he was like, "You know what? I'm going to watch this, but I want you to tell me all about it." And so I was going into this, and he quoted, is it War Games, the Matthew Broderick film from
Oh
the
man,
80s?
yeah,
And
that's an
and
'80s
so
classic.
Gary quotes it and says, "The only way to win is to not play the game."
Yeah.
Mm.
And I was just like, "Thank you, Gary. I'll be quoting you in the podcast." Because like that's just it, right? Like there comes a time when you either walk away or you are in it, and you will be sacrificing more of yourself than the conflict is really worth. Whether it's personal, right, a one-on-one conflict, or one side of the country on the other side of the country conflict, or a country against country conflict, like how 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 engaged do you want to be? At which point can you walk away, and at which point is it too late?
And when you're stuck on a tiny little island, where do you walk away to when it's all you've ever known?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and his sister leaves. She
Mm-hmm.
has to leave the island entirely to
Yeah,
be done with it.
yeah. Siobhan literally is looking at this going, "Not for me, I'm out of here." Literally walks away. She shows us that option of letting go, walking away. And not that it didn't cost her, right? This is where
Yeah.
her only family is. This is where, the life that she's known is. But it is not leaving her with many options, right? If she wants to maintain herself as she knows herself, she needs to go somewhere else. Or if she wants to grow and be something else, be someone else, she needs to go elsewhere, because they're not offering her the opportunity.
And it speaks to the fear of change that's inherent in sort of the human condition. He can't leave.
Mm.
He literally can't leave.
But couldn't he?
Nah, I don't. You know what? I don't think he could. Just with the donkey and the animals and just sort of
Mm.
his way of life and his sort of way of thinking, I don't think he had it in him to leave.
Yeah, it's interesting because he does leave periodically. He just doesn't stay. Because doesn't he go to the main island? Because I think or am I wrong? Is
No, no, no,
the
no, no. He goes to the harbor where all the towns are and whatnot. He's still on
yeah?
the.
Oh, he's still on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I
He's
thought that maybe
close
the
to
mailbox. He's
That's
it's like,
close.
it's like Truman Show. He's at the harbor. He wants to get on the boat. No.
He just never gets on the boat. And he's not interested. But he
That's
should have
true.
been interested, if you ask me.
He just wants to get back the way things were because they were good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yet they're not now. Um,
I mean, isn't that a thing that we can all relate to?
yeah.
Wanting back the way things were, right? You lose your job, you just want things to go back to the way things were. Someone you love dies, you just want to go back to the way things were. You become injured or sick, and like you're left. A year or two ago, I had some issues with my eyes, and my retinas decided that they didn't want to work properly anymore. And so I just very suddenly, through no incident or fault, I was in the hospital for a number of months, in and out, getting work done on my eyes. And thankfully, my vision is mostly recovered. But I just remember sitting there going, like, I just want to go back to the way it was.
Hmm.
Like, why did this happen to me? Why, and you start asking all these questions that don't really have, even if there are answers, they are not satisfactory, and you're just left longing for what was before. And again, it's the same if someone dies. It's the same if a friendship dissolves. It's the same if, I mean, I think there are so many different things that life can pose. There are so many things that can happen to us that leave us asking this question. And so in that way, I think this film is so relatable. Because we will all ask ourselves that question at least one point in our life, if not several times.
Yeah. And over different things. You put that beautifully there. You know, it's interesting, and I won't get into any of the details or anything, but there was one point in my life where I lost a friend explosively. I don't, you know, it's one thing to grow apart.
Mm-hmm.
I lost a friend explosively, and I mean, mistakes were made, but it came for me at the time. It kind of came out of nowhere. Like it was almost like that moment in the bar. They said, "Well, I don't want to be your friend anymore." I'm like, "What? Why?" Like it didn't, um, and it was very, very painful. You know, it was like this because we were very close.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things that, um, it was for me. Looking back again, it was hard to get a clear answer. Eventually, got a bit of a clear answer, and I still didn't fully understand. But it was still like, whoa, my gosh, like what? It was like getting hit by a truck.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are lots of other things in my life that I would say are more significant in terms of like I wouldn't want to go back to the way things were, like you were saying, but I know that that was a moment too where I was just like, what? Why? How did we get here?
Mm-hmm.
What is going on?
Well, and isn't that just a perfect mirror to, what was happening between Colm and Padraic?
Yeah.
Um, it, you were sort of blindsided, as Padraic was,
Mm.
by this decision that the other friend has made. And I wonder what would have happened if your friend or if Colm had actually, let the other in on what was going on with them. I mean, as Canadians, let's talk about our aversion to conflict and confrontation. Like, I see this in friendships all the time, in work relationships all the time. I actually, one of the things that was really striking a chord for me with this film was the lack of like straightforward conversation. Like there were a couple of confrontations.
Mm.
Colm let Paring in a little bit on what was going on with him, but mostly just the decision he had made. And again, like his explanation of it was not very satisfactory. But I wonder if that friendship couldn't have been salvaged if Colm had said to Parig, like, I, I, things feel bleak. I feel insignificant, right? Like sharing his feelings, sharing his thoughts. Every time he went to the priest said to Colm, "How's the despair?" The priest knew what was going on with him.
Oh
His
yeah,
friend didn't.
yeah, that's right.
So, like, could his best friend not have been an asset to those feelings of despair? Could he not have been of help, right? Steve, if your friend had said to you, "It annoys me when you do this," or "I feel this," like if he had just let you in on what was going on with him, there would not have been that explosion. I'm willing to bet. I don't know the situation,
No.
right? But it's a tale as old as time. And again, we see it in this film. Someone keeps something bottled up inside, and when it finally bubbles up to the surface, tiny bubbles at first, and then just an outright explosion. And yeah, I stand by my statement. I think Canadians are really bad for that as well, right? We just bottle things up, bottle things up, bottle things up until we can't anymore. Like the pressure cooker can only go on for so long, and then we just have these like random confusing explosions, confusing to everyone around us, and sometimes the damage is irreparable. I
Mm.
don't like it. I do not recommend it. People, go to therapy. Talk about your feelings with a professional and then deal with your relationships accordingly. This is my plug. You're welcome. Free advice.
But I mean, the film also speaks just to sort of the, as you guys have very eloquently alluded to, just the nature of male toxicity and sort of the myth that men don't talk about their feelings.
Mm.
Men would rather blow up and cut their own fingers off and throw them at the door and get into wars than sort of express how they're feeling to one another.
That's a great point. It's, and not only that, if you look at it from that perspective, Padraic is the one that's trying to do the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the one getting pushed aside.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not until he stands up for himself and he's like, I'm nice. That's the worst thing that I've done to you, so sue me. And he's getting really mad and not nice about it. And that's when Colin says, I think I like him again. Like, he's so twisted and just so off center and unbalanced. And again, that makes for a great character, but I don't think I would like him very much in real life. Like, he's just too much chaos in one body for me to be able to deal with.
Who Colm?
Colm, yeah.
Colin. One thing I wanted to talk to as well. I would love to talk about the Banshee. Now, I know that, Deb, before we were recording, you were talking a little bit about Banshees themselves, but the role of the Banshee in this movie is very interesting to me, but I can't really put my finger on it. I wanted to know what you two thought.
What's the Banshee? Who's the Banshee?
It sounds like an 80s hip-hop song.
Who is the Banshee?
Drop a beat. Okay.
I mean, I think everyone presumes that. Is it Miss McCormick? Bring it up on MDB real quick. I keep wanting to call her Miss McCracken, but no, Mrs. McCormick.
Yep.
You know, she's this very witchy-looking woman who has a gnarled face and hands and smokes a corncob pipe and, you know, is always walking around with her head covered in flowing fabrics and appears out of nowhere. And it's a misty place to begin with, so it's, you know, she's very unsettling, and everyone talks about how scared they are of her, and people hide behind. There's a reference to hiding behind walls, and that happens right at the beginning of the film, and then you start seeing more of the island, and you realize that so much of this, I think it's limestone, that's you know, one of the local resources that has been used in so much of the construction. Like, so many of these limestones have been, you know, constructed into these like great walls lining off all of the, you know, patches of farmland, and so there are lots of walls to hide behind when you see the Banshee, or when other things happen that you are scared of. There are many walls. It's almost like a metaphor. But yeah, I think she is sort of like the go-to image of what a lot of people would think of as a Banshee. But I don't know. I think you can push that metaphor further, right? Whatever is hiding inside of Colm that is making him behave this way and starting all of that, like, that feels like an unsettling Banshee of its own. I think there are a number of things that you can point to that happen in the story, right? These things that you uncover that have given way to conflict, that have given way to effects on people, right? The stuff that's going on in the household of Dominic and his cop father, right? It's unspeakable, the fact that, you know, they refer to the dad interfering with his son, and it's, you know, it's so disturbing. These sort of sins, these harms that we cause to each other, like, those are terrible and terrifying, and we want to hide from them the way that we want to hide from this woman who is walking around this foggy island in flowing robes and saying weird things like, someone's going to die, maybe two.
Well, you know what she reminded me of is like a Greek chorus. Like, that's what kind of, like, now again, I know this is Irish folklore that's stepping into, and quite frankly, my grand experience with Banshees stems to the most terrifying film ever made, which is Darby O'Gill and the Little People, which traumatized me as a 7-year-old.
I don't know. Can you tell us a little bit about it, Steve? Because I am not familiar with that classic film.
Really?
Yes, I literally want to know what you're referring to.
Dave, tell me you know this film.
I do.
It's terrifying. It's Sean Connery's first film.
Oh, Lord.
And which is funny, because isn't he Scottish?
Yes,
he is Scottish, but
he's an Irishman. An Irishman, Darby O'Gill, living amongst, or I don't remember very much. All I remember is my parents rented it when I was 7 because they saw was Sean Connery running around with cute little leprechauns, and then they went out on a date
This
and left
is
my
wonderful.
yeah. And so they went out on a date and left my sister babysitting me, and she of course didn't give a rip. She was upstairs on the phone, and when the screaming banshee came on, the ghostly white presence. Little 7-year old me was hiding behind the chair, begging for salvation.
Jesus help me, Jesus help me, Jesus, Jesus.
What is
Our Father who art in heaven,
happening?
hallowed be thy name.
That's my experience with banshees. So
A harrowing one indeed.
it was a rough night. Um, but no, I mean the fact that she would come and say these things and be like, two people are going to die, all this stuff. I was like, is this a fate? Is this an issue of fate? Is this inevitability? Like, why bother having her in this? In this particular story, because she wasn't needed per se, but she seems to be sort of rooted in that Irish folklore.
Yeah, no, she's a classic trope for sure. I don't have a better answer than that.
I was gonna say, don't all talk at once. Slow down, everybody.
Dave, what do you think? Any insights on that?
No, not really.
That's fair. Moving on. And
That's a question you could have sent ahead of time.
sorry, I didn't think of it until we were talking.
That's okay. I just feel the need to chew that one through a bit. I think what you said about, like the idea of the fates and, the role of the Greek chorus, I think gives some scope to her position as a character in that film. But I mean, I might say that, she's the thing that we cannot ignore, no matter how much we try.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And this, especially when you look at the character of Colm, he has been trying to ignore something that he cannot ignore. And I feel like he keeps trying to ignore it, right? I think him rejecting his friend is a version of him trying to ignore this thing that he feels insignificant. No one's going to remember him. He hasn't done anything with his life. And so he feels like, this is me doing something about it. I'm going to take it out on my friend and reject him. And it's still there, right? He gets distracted for a while. But so he's trying to hide from that sense of foreboding and despair, but the best he can do is distract himself away from it. It is still there when all of the chaos settles. So that's my best guess at
That's fair.
what she may represent, is the thing that we can't ignore and will still be there. So sometimes you just have to bring her in for a chat in front of the hearth. Let her smoke her pipe.
His sister's the only one that likes her, and she's a little bit nervous, but she
love her.
I'm not saying she's beloved, but she'll. Um. Now, but you wanted to talk a little bit about the policeman you'd mentioned.
And I felt like that was everyone's like disgust with the policeman, and even like Colm goes back and forth. You see them chatting in the pub, and then in another scene he's punching him in the face. Like everyone just seems to really have whatever their relationship with the cop, hate is part of it. There's some real aggression that's shown to him, and I just, that couldn't go unnoticed for me in our current political and social climate.
Right.
Where we're dealing with the question of the police force, what we use them for, how good they are at what we think they should be doing. Are there other ways that we can go about getting help when we need it? What kind of help do we need, and why do we just presume that the cops are what we need? Because a lot of people have been abused at the hands of people who have been given a lot of power. And I'd like to also point out that what we currently, like the police force as we know it, that whole structure goes back to the English in Ireland, uh, having forces of soldiers that were specifically there to keep the Irish in line and
Mm.
oppress them into submission. And so that was sort of the formula that then, became the British police force in England. And Billies and Bobbies and all that kind of stuff. And then you have that sort of framework when people are coming over to colonize North America as we know it now. And so like there is a real history of oppression
Mm.
in the police force. And I am shocked as all of these little nuances and bits of history are coming out that people hadn't really ever thought to question. I'm grateful that we're unpacking all of that. So yeah, I mean, all of that to say, like, this is sort of a personal journey I've been on. As a person who is married to a black man, I have lots of opportunity to hear the perspective from someone who belongs to a people group that has been specifically targeted and oppressed and harmed by the police force. So I'm doing a lot of learning. I'm doing a lot of discovery and chewing through a lot of this stuff. So to see it in this film and then just sort of trace it all back to the history of the oppression of the Irish by the English in, colonized Ireland, it just kind of came full circle for me, which was really cool. Even though what's not cool is oppression and power mongering. So
which we see far too much of these days.
Yep. Yeah, we can't. It is a thing that we can no longer ignore. It is hanging over us. It is around every corner, just waiting for us to deal with. And so
like a banshee.
Exactly.
Synergy.
There you go. It all comes full circle.
That's why you're the host, Steve.
That's right.
Well done, like. But yeah, that was very interesting to me because period pieces like that, I don't often see cops made out to be villains, right? And there was only one, right? So we don't really have a control case to compare.
It was the entire police force and not the entire police force at the same time. It was one guy
on a tiny island, right?
Right.
He may have been the only policeman. He may have been the police force.
Right.
But even the way that he's in the pub talking to Colm and he's very, very excited about the execution that he's been invited to on the mainland.
Right.
That penchant for violence and the way that there's the reference of violence and power often going hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it's power is a very difficult thing to wield benevolently, because it's just so easy to escalate that power into oppression. So the policeman becomes this very excellent way of dealing with that theme of power and escalation and responsibility, which I think goes back to our initial friendship focus, right? Colm had the power to make his friend feel like shit, and he used it. And I think part of it was intentional, but I think there was an unintentional element to it as well, right? He never meant to get at Padraic, by killing his donkey. He was sorry for that. Genuinely sorry, but still, like, he had power over his friend, and he abused it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And one of the other things that I think of when you're talking there too, maybe this is a little bit of a juke to the left, but you've got the appearance of the abuse of power with the police. You also have the appearance of legacy with Colm, because he wants to write the grand symphony, wants to write the grand song of Inisherin. Yet he's still doing these terrible things to make sure it happens. He's cutting off his fingers. He's threatening his friends or his friend. He's fine with everybody else. That's
for now.
Yeah. Who knows?
Where does it stop? That's the question, right? Where does it stop?
Yeah.
It applies.
And it's the curse of the ego, the id as well. Just,
Mm.
he's cutting off his hand to spite his face almost,
Yeah.
literally.
But I saw what you did there. That's
It was good. I was hoping one of us was going to say it. There's so
when he says he's going to give you the finger, watch out. That's
each and every one. It even that element of body horror, right? Like, I don't know. It makes me very proud that, like, Irish storytelling is willing to go there, and that's an element that appears in lots of Irish storytelling, especially the older stuff. So, what we know now as Northern Ireland or the North of Ireland, depending on your political persuasion, but the part that politically belongs to the UK. That is a province of Ireland that has their flag. It looks a lot like the English flag. So it's a white background with St. George's Red Cross on it. And right in the middle, there's a little gold emblem with a red hand in the middle of it. It's known as the Red Hand of Ulster. And the story of that hand goes back to a feud over the land. And there are two men who are competing for it, and it's decided that they need to run a race around the perimeter, and whoever crosses the finish line first will be the owner of that land. And one of the men is losing, and so he cuts off his hand and throws it over the finish line in order to beat his competitor. And that, blood-covered hand
what?
becomes, an emblem on the flag. So there's this real sort of like willingness to go to great lengths to get the story told, right? There's this they're willing to go there, and it again, I'm not an expert on elements of story and what this means for the human psyche and all that kind of stuff, but that old kind of goriness, right? Like it feels like a more ancient thing to me, and that is a relic that continues to get used, and I loved seeing it in this film, gross as it was. I mean, it's not the kind of like element that I go to see a film for, but when used well, I can handle that kind of body horror because it's impactful, it's powerful, and I think they did such a good job of that. Like, this man is willing to literally sacrifice bits and pieces, important bits and pieces of himself, right? He's a fiddle player. What is he doing hacking off his fingers? What is he doing? He's quite confused, if you ask me.
I didn't think he was confused. I mean, I don't know why you went there. It seemed perfectly legitimate to me. It's like, it's just a logical conclusion.
It requires a lot of sacrifice in order for him to make the point that he's willing to make.
It's fair.
Rather foolish, if you ask me.
Excuse me.
But there's your bit of that's my limited knowledge on older Irish storytelling, and a related thought of how gross the Irish are willing to get to prove a point. They are not afraid to go there.
So we'll put that in the description for this episode. And gross Irish storytelling.
Deb gets gross and lets you know about Irish storytelling.
Deb gets gross. A new segment here on Screenfish Radio is Deb gets gross. And
today on Deb Gets Gross. So.
It'll be short-lived. It's not my favorite thing.
Just before we wrap up, I was wondering if there's anything else that you all want to talk about in relation to the film.
I mean, I think for me, just the commentary on how easy it is for us as a species to kind of lose empathy for one another. And I mean, and that's why it speaks so relevantly to just modern day and what's going on now, because we kind of see it in every walk of life, and it's horrifying and it's sad, and you just have to keep fighting against it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That honestly, that is so heartbreaking about this film. That's the thing. I think I said it before. By the end, you don't even know why you're doing it. Again,
Violence against the mic.
violence against my microphone.
Why'd
Um,
you do it?
I don't know. But I mean, the fact when you lose empathy, how quickly you can lose ground and sight
Yeah.
of what matters. It's astounding to me.
It
Um,
sort of I had wondered at one point where this story had come from. Like I had wondered how it was developed, and it occurred to me that like lots of communities where most people know most people have those stories of the two people who don't get along and no one can quite remember why anymore.
yeah,
And I wonder if it was just someone going, why might two people who have soured against each other, like what would the story be there? And I think this is just such a satisfying explanation of that, right? Very specific.
yeah,
But I think that sometimes it's just really like, that slow increment of like one, like a dumb or seemingly insignificant thing leading to another thing, and it slowly escalates. And the next thing you know, these two are notoriously at odds with one another. Really good storytelling. A very simple premise with a really good story. I loved it for that.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Sorry, Dave, were you going to say something
No, no, no. Just agreed. Just it was a of agreement.
there? For sure. Well, having said that, let's see if we have an of agreement ourselves. Let's screen it or skip it. The Banshees of Inisherin. Screen it or skip it.
Oh,
Screen
it's a screen.
it.
I think it's a screen hit. I mean, I don't think we've said anything to the contrary. This is again, it to me, this is a movie about the human experience in the highs and the lows, mostly the lows, but it's got a genuine honesty to it and a genuine sort of frankness to it that's necessary and also really hard to look away from. I mean, I think this is one of the best films of the year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're talking about it being Oscar worthy, right?
Yeah.
For a very good reason. I mean, and the Oscars are not the be all and end all of, they're not the authority
It's
on film.
not. Oh my God. What am I in this industry for? Okay.
There are far too many movies, even just in a year, to choose one as the best. So I mean, I have questions about the authority of the Oscars, but they do look at films for a reason, and I think this one is. I would agree, Dave. This one is definitely worthy of the Oscars looking at, and I think it's worthy of the rest of us looking at it. So I say, screen it or else.
Or else.
She'll take one of her fingers. That's
I'm a guitar player. I would never. I also like typing and using a fork. I mean, there's so many things, right? Like I like all 10 of them. I will keep as many of them as I have power to keep.
that's fair. Yeah, it's skip it for me. This movie sucked.
I'll be right there with the
No, it's phenomenal. It's excellent. It's I agree. I think it's one of it's not I don't think it is the best film I've seen this year, but it certainly is in the conversation. It is absolutely phenomenal. Well
Yeah,
written,
we
well
know for you
executed.
it's Black Adam, so that's fine.
I was gonna say maybe you watch Darby O'Gill again.
My heart, my soul went dark for a moment there when you said that.
Ice cold.
That movie messed me up as a kid.
Oh dear.
And Black Adam messed me up as an adult. No, I'm kidding.
Don't see Darby O'Gill, but don't see the Banshee.
That's right. If you see one Banshee movie, go to Inisherin. If you see two, don't just see. Don't do that.
Oh God.
See Darby O'Gill.
Don't see Darby O'Gill. No, just see Banshees again with Inisherin.
It's true. I recommend. The fact that I could only watch it once before doing this podcast. It was a bit of a sad thing for me. I'll be watching it over and over again. Gary hasn't seen it yet. We're going to enjoy that together.
I would love to hear what you and Gary, that conversation between you and Gary after this will be fun.
As an Englishman and a pseudo-Irish woman, we have lots of great conversations about those kinds of stories.
Thank you both. This has been phenomenal. I appreciate you both, and I appreciate you both coming on to chat. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Always.
Anytime. How can people connect with you? You can plug your stuff.
I don't do anything significant, in terms of like work life on social media. I just like to, be present and be available. So, you can always, come at me on.
What? Is that a phrase you want to say on a film we just discussed? It's like...
I don't have anything sharp enough to...
It feels problematic saying that. I'm just going to put it out there.
I suppose so. Fair.
It feels...
I'm just saying, if, you want to connect with me, I'm on the socials and whatnot. But, you don't... I don't have any sort of, like, professional reasons.
Okay.
I work with a bunch of churches doing interesting alternative takes on, Christianity and worship and all that kind of thing. And I really like art. I think art is an important part of that, whether it's music or film or literature. So if you want to talk about any of that stuff, you can come to me.
Come to me is better than come at me.
So much better. I'm a Canadian. We don't like conflict.
Well,
what about you, Dave?
Dave, where can people come at you?
Well, well, as always, Steve, you can find me and the good people who work with me over at In the Seats. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram. And at intheseats.ca, where we cover all things that the moving image has to offer, and come read about it and come listen to our podcast. In the Seats where I sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, and I pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion, which is available on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So please go check us out.
Absolutely. And for you at home, a reminder, you can find us wherever podcasts are available, and you can find us on YouTube. You can like and subscribe to us as well. If you go to the podcast page on screenfish.net, you can download Fishing for More. Some small group questions help you get this conversation started where you are about the film that we have just seen together. And we will be back next week to talk about Barbarian, which is a film I have not seen as of yet, but it is on Disney+.
You're in for a treat. Treat.
I have heard that, and I have been drafted by two gentlemen who want me to watch this film. So I'm going to talk about Barbarian next week. So thank you both for coming on, and for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.
And hit those subscribe buttons. It's important.
Hit it.